Story 1. Ignore them. If you can't ignore them because it's at work or something, just ask them to provide data that proves their point. I'm an engineer, and I get a lot of contractors trying to say they can do my job better. I don't know, maybe some of them can. But when it comes to putting my stamp on a drawing, I'm not going to risk my license over something because the contractor has been doing this a long time and knows better. I'll often say, if you want to send me your calculations, I'll be happy to look them over and see where our disagreement is. I don't mind being wrong, but I need proof before I risk my license. 100% of the time they say, I don't have calculations. And I say, well, I do, so I guess I'll need to go on that. Story 2. I like to irritate them quietly. Most people who think they are smart have loud, booming voices in an effort to bully others into agreeing with their talk. They also tend to thrive on attention. When dealing with them, it's best to speak with a flat voice and use phrases such as, oh, I see, or that's interesting. Doing this infuriates them because you aren't overtly taking their side and don't appear to be flattering them. I find it quite comical. Usually, they will lose interest in trying to speak with you and instead seek out a weak-minded or very unintelligent victim to impress upon. Story 3. I realize that it's possible I'm not as smart as I think I am and should stop trying to degrade other people by assuming they're not as smart as they think they are. Story 4. I consider them lost souls and try not to deal with them unless I absolutely have to. Trying to explain anything will make it worse, so stick to superficial topics and the bare minimum if you have to be around them. Story 5. I'm a network engineer and deal with this a lot. It's not that they're not smart. It's just that they're more confident in their assumed knowledge on a subject than they should be. This usually manifests itself into the persona of Bob in accounting who knows how to change the fuser in the laser printer, so he knows how all the network systems work. This person will make a bunch of assumptions on things, start spreading bad information that people act on, and then when I show up to make a change, there are a lot of consequences to deal with. The best way to deal with people like this is to make them answer their own questions. They usually pick up on all of their answers starting with, I thought, or I assumed, or I was guessing. I don't like humiliating people. I'd rather just teach them the proper channels to deal with things for their own sake. Story 6. Treat them with respect, the same as how you treat everyone else. Just talk to them as if they are like anyone else. Perhaps they're happy acting smart. Let's give it to them. Life is too short to be complicated. Story 7. They can be difficult to manage at times because they are usually the loudest about being intelligent, and they think they are the only ones who are right about things. So, it takes a lot of patience. But they can also be good people. I do not treat them any differently from anybody else. It is not their fault. A lot of people just are not capable of self-awareness and growth, and that is okay. It does not change my life whatsoever. Story 8. I just try to stay calm and ask them questions to get them thinking a little deeper. Finding common ground helps a lot too, making the whole conversation way easier. Sometimes, I share my own mistakes to show it's okay not to know everything. But honestly, if it feels like a lost cause, I will just leave and save my energy for better conversations. Like, why waste time when not everyone is going to see things your way, right? Story 9. I deal with a client at work who is constantly talking himself up. There's a running joke in the office that we should take a shot every time he mentions he has a Master of Business Administration and Special Security clearances. When he gets started on how awesome he is, I reply with nothing but dead silence to the point it's awkward. It's helped reduce the time he spends letting me know how smart he is. Story 10. I've noticed that the dumbest people are the ones who technically have the most knowledge and just use it to insult others. I just tell them, you realize this is a conversation, not a competition, right? Story 11. I've been told by quite a few people that they think I'm intelligent. I don't think I'm particularly intelligent, but when you encounter someone who genuinely thinks they're smart and they're not as sharp as they think, it's painful. If I knew anything about the topic they were talking about, I'd ask them questions I already knew the answer to. If they got it wrong, I'd start poking holes into their logic or debating their thesis. Most of these people aren't capable of comprehending that they don't know everything and will argue that black is white and white is black. It was very draining, so I stopped engaging with these kinds of people, or I just act like I don't know anything about it at all. A quiet life is an easy life. Story 12. By letting them get themselves into trouble, then simply correcting their mistakes and displaying to management how you resolve key issues so the smart person loses influence, so to speak. Story 13. In my experience, anyone who tells you how smart they are is someone to avoid. These are usually the same people who sit in meetings, trainings, or other events and ask questions even when everyone knows the answer. They like to hear their own voice. In my working life, some of the dumbest people have also been the biggest narcissists. Story 14. My dad is like this, and if you try correcting him, he gets super defensive and mad. I just let him be wrong at this point. Either he will learn or he won't, not my problem. Story 15. There are very few contexts in which you have to. There are also very few situations where this exact thing is played out in any meaningful way. Unless you are actually talking about situations where a person thinks they know more about a specific topic than you do, which is not really about being smart. In those cases, you should probably start with checking your own ego. Is the person saying they know more wrong, or do you just not like being told you are wrong and you are being defensive? Story 16. Assuming I'm actually smarter than them, I respond with curiosity rather than judgment. Makes the whole thing more interesting, and my energy is not drained. I might actually learn something new. Story 17. Let them talk about a subject, then do actual reading on it, and ask the hyper-technical questions and watch them be wrong. Have sources cited on your phone to show them that they're wrong as well. Story 18. Avoid as much as possible. If you need to disagree or prove them wrong, present facts and remain very neutral emotionally. Don't actually point out that someone is wrong. Just state the facts and support them with data. Sometimes these people are just unwise, but a lot of somewhat toxic people think they are smarter than they are, so be careful around them. Story 19. I have to deal with one every day. The owner of the company I work for. He inherited it from his dad, has no actual clue about the business we are in, artificial intelligence, but loves hearing himself talk and lectures everyone around him. I just say yes, okay, or variations of it, and then go about my day making the correct decisions. This avoids having to hit him over the head with a brick. I choose my battles carefully. Story 20. I typically encourage them to post about how smart they think they are on Reddit, where such things are well received by people of similar intelligence. Story 21. Avoiding. If that doesn't work, ignoring. If that doesn't work, pretending they are right and trying to move on. If it's something really important like concerning racism, arguments, and sometimes ridicule in the hope they won't speak about that theory again. Basically, how Harris handled Trump. Very annoying type of people, especially if you are smarter and you know exactly how wrong they are. Story 22. Avoid them as much as possible or take them down a notch depending on the circumstances. If it is related to opinions, especially politics, I will not even bother to fact check because I know they are not receptive to it. If you want to spout some nonsense about something I know about, I will call you out. Story 23. I just look at them blankly for a second, then say, "That is literally the dumbest thing I have ever heard," then walk away before they can respond. After a couple of times, they stop sharing their stupidity with anyone. Story 24. I argue with them online until they inevitably resort to petty insults, death threats, or, in one case, outright say they are going to harm me and my wife. Then I block and report them because they're not human. They're animals. Story 25. Come on now. You know everyone else knows everything, and you know nothing. It's such a narcissistic world nowadays. So sad. It's their way or the highway. No wonder there are so many ignorant people these days. Story 26. If it is someone that I have to deal with regularly, especially at work, I typically do my best to put them in positions where their ignorance becomes evident, so they hopefully get a clue and change their behavior. Sometimes it actually works. Story 27. I feel like it's the opposite. Most people are smarter than they think they are. A smart person will assume they are the least smart person in every room. For people who are closed-minded and shut others down, just observe and ignore. Smart is subjective. Story 28. It's like playing chess with a pigeon. No matter how well you strategize, they'll strut around as if they've won. I focus on patience and humor, guiding the conversation while letting them enjoy their moment. Story 29. Think of how stupid the average person is, and realize half of them are stupider than that. I work with physicians. The number of patients they have who read some misleading article online and think they're smarter than the doctor who did undergraduate studies, medical school, residency, and fellowship, and then has been practicing for 10 years, is nothing short of mind-blowing. I blame Oprah and Dr. Phil. There's nothing wrong with seeking a second opinion, but people need to be reasonable. Story 30. Avoidance, if possible, is the only way. If they think they are smart, then it is unlikely you will be able to convince them they are not. Of course, you should also be asking yourself if you are actually one of those people yourself. And I am not saying that to be nasty or mean. I mean, it is always a good idea to test yourself and make sure you are not falling into bad ideas because you do not believe you can. Anybody can turn into a fool really quickly given the right circumstances. Story 31. I try not to engage in meaningful conversation. There is one specific person at work that I converse with very little, just because he tries to tell stories, and they are long-winded. He is always laughing at the most stupid things. Story 32. Excitedly ask them more about the basic subject they're pretending to be knowledgeable about, as if you genuinely want to learn more. For example, if they're talking about something related to chemistry, get excited and start asking them more about how chemistry works. Usually, they'll try to change the subject pretty quickly, and you can decide at that point if you want to let them or keep pushing until it's clear to everyone that they're not being truthful. Story 33. I would wait until they showed their stupidity, then attack. I knew this one guy who was a self-proclaimed expert on everything. During the mad cow scare, he was going on about how if people cooked their beef until it was well done, they wouldn't have to worry about mad cow disease. I asked him what the temperature for well done was. He replied around 165 degrees Fahrenheit. I informed him that it took temperatures above 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit to deactivate mad cow prion. He was not happy. I didn't ask which dwarf he was. Story 34. I don't find it easy to tolerate ignorance, especially these days when ignorance is encouraged and celebrated by many. If someone is open-minded and thinks critically, I engage. If someone is too uninformed to realize their lack of understanding and persists in their ignorance, missing the point entirely or needing basic logic explained, I'm mostly disengaged. Those conversations just aren't worth it. Don't argue with an uninformed person, or others won't be able to tell the difference. Story 35. My sister-in-law all the way. Mostly, I limit contact, and when I do talk with her, I try to keep to benign subjects. If she goes off on something, I ignore her. She doesn't really like me and thinks I'm a bitch since I don't engage. Story 36. You let natural selection and Mother Nature deal with them, like how Trump suggested injecting bleach to save you from COVID-19, and how overall masks are made to oppress you. They sort of clear themselves out if you just give it time. Story 37. I watch my own ego. Even if someone isn't as intelligent as they may believe, there can still be times where they are correct and I am wrong. They could also offer legitimate ideas I have not considered. Actually, it really helped me out this week with a problem. So I say, judge ideas on their own merit, not the person sharing them. Story 38. If done right, you can make them believe whatever you want. So make them believe that they maybe aren't that smart and should stay humble. If they're narcissistic, it's a different story. Then try to never engage with them outside of a crowd. Story 39. If it's a friendly relationship, then I would ask questions or raise doubt about the topic. If it's a more adversarial relationship, then I would call them on their nonsense. Story 40. Depends. Do they mean well? I'm polite and kind. Do they just think a lot of themselves but aren't as smart as they think they are? Nothing. Happens quite often. Are they arrogant and trying to show off their imagined intellect? I subtly poke at them for fun. Are they actively hurting others by being hateful individuals who target minorities and try to spread disproven idiotic beliefs? I just tell them what stupid idiots they are, in detail. Story 41. Being able to talk with people less intelligent than you is a sign of intelligence. If someone you know is making a mistake and is refusing to change it, that's on them. All you can do is inform them and let them come to the realization on their own. You don't have to lie or argue. You can state your piece and naturally move on to the next thing. Story 42. On a related note, I am over 40, and not once in my entire life have I ever met anyone who openly admitted they were not smart. Everyone thinks they are smart, and it is the other people who are dumb. I am constantly looking inward so I can recognize and accept my limitations. There is nothing wrong with saying, I do not know enough about insert subject to have an opinion on it. Story 43. Sometimes I'll use big words around them, but incorrectly and out of context to see how they react. In a few instances, they began to use them also out of context, and then I just send them out into the world to confuse others.